Hey there, welcome back to Tennille Talks. So y'all, I'm going to read this story backwards a little bit, but we'll start with present day. Present day energy, like right now, this is about the energy of a tower. The tower brings catastrophe. It brings revelation, upheaval. This is the moment when our beliefs are shattered. Our beliefs are shattered because we have built a way of life. We've built a relationship. We've built a mindset. We've built some type of knowledge base, all on a flawed foundation, which means it always was going to crumble. There's always going to be an expiration date when we are building something on flaws and not on truth. And so in order to understand why there is a tower moment, I'm going to go back in time to the very beginning. Now, I did use my Celtic Oracle Healing deck. Now, this card, the very first card, says wondrous child. And so the tower that people are experiencing now is because a long time ago, there was a decision that was made with a wondrous child. Now, in extraordinary times of need, an extraordinary child is born. I kind of got the vision when I got to this part of the reading of like Secret Santa. Have you guys ever worked a part of like a staff or a group of employees? Christmas time is coming up. I know not everybody celebrates that, but Christmas time comes up and everybody in the office or who's a part of the staff writes their name on a piece of paper or on a popsicle stick and they drop it in like a box. Well, everybody randomly picks a name and whoever you pick, that is the person you have to buy a gift for. Now, typically there's going to be like a budget. Everybody that participates don't spend any more than, like 15 or 20 bucks. Now, sometimes the people that are playing in the Secret Santa game, sometimes there could be like a little notebook where they write their favorite color, they write their favorite things. That way, if you pick their name, you can refer to the book. That way, you're not totally left in the dark about what to buy them. Okay. Now, I got the energy of Secret Santa. My handmade card says, try to get what you love. Otherwise, you'll have to love what you got. So imagine it's time for the Secret Santa gift exchange. Everybody's purchased their gifts. They got their names. Cool. Well, when you're in a group setting and everybody is opening their gifts, you can typically tell by the way the crowd responds whether or not like the gift itself is a crowd pleaser. Like everybody gets excited. Everybody wants to switch. Everybody's like, I want that one. But then there are some gifts where you hear like nothing at all, just crickets. Or it's like, oh, okay. Or it's like, oh, or there's laughs. So imagine that somebody opens a gift years ago. And unfortunately, they didn't think that this gift was something that they loved. They didn't think that they got what they loved, right? And so it says, listen, try to get what you love. Otherwise, you'll have to love what you got. The gift that was unwrapped years ago that has now caused this present day tower moment was a child. And so my Celtic Oracle card talks about a wondrous child representing a promise. When children are born, it is a signal. It allows you to kind of establish some type of hope for a future. You can dream for abundance. It's about nourishment. It connects you deeper to the divine. Children are the closest thing to spirit. And so to have a child born is to say that there's still hope for us. Okay. And so if you were born into your family, when you were unwrapped, what was inside of you, it wasn't yet able to see. Now, I have a card here that says spiritual work. And so what this is telling me, spiritual work is inner work. If you are the extraordinary child that was born into a family that had an extraordinary need, this is saying that their spirit had an extraordinary need, and you were the child to be born in that family that would almost reconnect that bond. But they couldn't see what was in you because they were so far disconnected from their own spirit. So when they unwrapped you, they didn't think that they got a gift that they loved. Maybe it was a gift that they thought they would have to learn to love. But initially, when they unwrapped you, it's like they read you wrong. But the way you blossom and the way you bloom, and it's going to be from the inside out. And because you are growing from the inside first, you are almost teaching or showing them what they have not been able to do. This was a need that they had, and the Most High was essentially servicing their need by sending you. You're like a serviceman going to fix a repair. Well, this family has a spiritual need, and their spirits need work. And so I am going to send a child of promise to this family. But unfortunately, the family is going to unwrap this child and think that they've been given some type of prank or dummy gift. Like, they just don't see the value. Y'all, you are a whole 9 of Pentacles. And what I'm saying is everything that is inside of you is also going to be the thing that sustains you, that builds your life. When you have a wondrous child or a child of promise, you are urged to cherish them, to develop them. They are carrying a talent or a skill, and sometimes it is latent within them, right? And so if the talent is inside of you, there's going to be a specific environment that is needed. And within that environment, there have to be long stretches of time where the child is uninterrupted, because their skill has to come out. It has to feel safe enough to come out. It has to be nurtured. It has to be seen, right? And so it has to be cultivated, but with intention. And so the Tower today is not necessarily because this family or this group, whoever unwrapped you. So we could be talking about mom and dad. This could be adopted parents. This could be caretakers. But typically the people that unwrap you are going to be the people that created you, or these are going to be the people who held you within your first few months of life. Like, I'm talking about people close to you that didn't read you right when you were first unwrapped. Now, one of the reasons why is maybe the way that you made yourself into the world. If it was outside of marriage, or if it was between young parents or parents of a different race, or, one parent was in the service and one parent, there are many reasons as to why when you're finally unwrapped, it may seem like there's nothing to love, but you were actually meeting an extraordinary need. So here's the problem. Here's where we really go wrong. Okay? It is what they decide to do next. They can't find the gift. They can't locate the thing that they're supposed to be loving, because listen, you gotta grow this thing. This is giving me like a microwave type of family. They just want it quick. They just want you to produce, but if you've got a kid that needs to be loved differently or nurtured in a specific kind of way, and you don't have the patience, or you're just very egoic, you would totally miss it. And so the problem is now I got the energy of a trap, right? Well, I can't find a reason to love you. And so now they start to figure out ways to make your existence beneficial. Now I have a card that says 8 of Swords, and it comes out with another card in my other deck that says Trap. So 8 of Swords and Trap. Now 8 of Swords is about a mental prison. Now the image on this card is of donkey skin. So this is about a French fairy tale. I'm going to tell you this because this is going to explain what your family did next, or this is just what happened next. Okay, so donkey skin, here we go. And so this is about a story of a princess who flees from an arranged marriage to her father. Now, her father was the king, and the king was unable to find another woman as beautiful as his deceased wife. So he set his sights on his daughter. Now, the king had a beautiful wife, he had a rich castle, but he also had like this marvelous donkey whose droppings were gold. Okay. And so in the process of recognizing that, like, I need to flee, I need to escape from my father, the princess locates her fairy godmother. The fairy godmother tells the princess to begin to request things. I will consent to this marriage, but you have to meet these requests first. So she says, okay, I'm going to request a dress as bright as the sun, a dress the color of the moon, a dress the color of the sky, and finally, she asks for the hide of his marvelous donkey. So her father, the king, had the donkey that shits gold, and so she wanted the donkey's hide. And so the donkey's hide is what the fairy godmother tells the princess. She tells her to put the hide on so that she can flee, and she would just disguise herself using the donkey skin. So I have another handmade card. It says, "It's okay if you don't like me. Not everybody has good taste." So I kind of got like a weird feeling when I heard that. I almost got that in the process of you growing, you maturing, you recognizing that there wasn't really a space set apart from you for you in a family where you could be nurtured and cherished and loved on appropriately. I almost felt like people just made peace with the fact that they just weren't able to meet your needs. And so in the event that it was clear that you had relationships that were fractured between parents, I feel like people just kind of felt like the breakdown of the relationship was more of a you thing. It was more of a your problem. You caused it. Even if they were an adult, they didn't kind of take ownership. They weren't accountable. They just felt like, oh, well, you don't have good taste. Like, it's your problem. I'm not doing anything wrong. So like, imagine that kind of energy. So she's fleeing from her father because the events would have been incestuous if she marries him. And so she's fleeing from him, but because he essentially doesn't see anything wrong with it, right? And so here's the problem with this thing. This donkey skin trap, this is saying that if you are a child of promise and if you are not nurtured, you create a self-imposed prison for yourself. And so the donkey skin can represent a persona, a personality, a way of being. And so sometimes we have a way of cutting off our gifted self and just adapting to the part of us that is going to get nurtured. And so if they don't nurture anything inside of you that your spirit is needing, you almost put on a disguise, right? And that's the self-imposed prison. But like, I'm going to try to get inside of this thing real quick. When you put on the donkey skin, it is because inside of you, you have determined that there is something outside of me to fear, right? So she's afraid of her father. In order to hide from her father, she disguises herself. She disguises her physical body, but also like the way she sees herself. Her father would have been her enemy. And because he was her enemy inside of her, he became her enemy outside of her. And so she needed this disguise. And so some of the mental prisons that we create are really about self-preservation. And yes, you may adapt a whole new way of being or speaking or direct. I mean, the way you learn to just totally neglect and put down your gifted version, the way you do that so easily, and the way you start to pick up other prisons. And like I said, some of these prisons are for preservation. And so the Eight of Swords is saying that you were trapped, you were feeling stuck, like you didn't really have options, and it was really a mental thing. So what I'm saying is, whatever got you to put on that donkey skin is a reflection of a seed that was planted. If your family couldn't plant you to grow, they planted something inside of you so that you would grow into something that they needed. And so the donkey skin, it was a disguise, but I feel like you first had to wear it in your mind. You first had to become the donkey before you actually manifested a whole new way of being that wasn't who you naturally and normally were. Is this making sense, y'all? But you were groomed into this prison. You were groomed into being something other than you naturally, normally were supposed to be. But there was something seated inside of you, supernaturally, wickedly, evilly, that you know what I mean? They couldn't use you, but they felt like, well, we can turn you into some type of an investment. Now let's go to the next part of the reading. So they're in a tower, not because when they opened you, they weren't super excited, but because they decided to plant you in order to imprison you, so that they could use you in a separate way. And this is really about trapping your mind, keeping you small, because you would almost become like some type of commodity or asset. And so at the beginning of the reading, I talked about a tower falling. This tower that is falling is an investment. Now, the wondrous child that I talked about at the beginning of the reading, it really talks about like this Irish warrior. Well, this Irish warrior was supposed to be some reincarnated god called Lu. And so this reading is saying they didn't nurture you as the child warrior, so you became donkey skin. You recognized who all your enemies were. You recognized all the fears that were real based on that environment. You created a prison in your mind. When you created a prison in your mind, you create a whole new persona, a way of being. In this reading, it looks like donkey skin, but for you, that could have been anything. However you showed up, but it wasn't organically you, right? But that was a reflection of the fact that you were somehow trapped. They had trapped you from your authentic self into the version of them that they would much rather grow. So the next level thing is like, okay, now that you're trapped, then what happens? Because remember, you are still this extraordinary child. Nothing about you has changed. So they plant something inside of you to keep you in a prison. Next step is, I have a card, I've read this before, by John Henry Clark. Powerful people cannot afford to educate the people that they oppress, because once you are truly educated, you will not ask for power, you will take it. So like, here's the other reason why they're getting in a tower. Whatever they planted in you in order to trap your energy and use for themselves, now it's time to deal it out. As long as you are wearing a donkey skin in your mind, you are an asset and an investment and a commodity that they can use again and again energetically. Are you getting this? Right? If you take off the donkey skin, the plan fails. And the donkey skin is not necessarily something physical. It is in your mind. It is in your mind. When you recognize that I have to fear this person, or I can't be this way, I can't speak this way. Anytime you shrink yourself out of fear, that is essentially you putting on a donkey skin. If you wear the donkey skin, the trap is set. The trap is working. Only you can break open the trap. You break it open when you no longer wear the disguise. But you have to tell yourself you are no longer going to wear the disguise. Y'all, at some point in this reading, the reason why they're in a tower is because you took off the donkey skin. Now, here's the next thing. When you are trapped, something about your energy was translating to people skills. Let me tell you how this reading breaks it down. So I have a card here, Three of Cups. On the Three of Cups card, it talks about Hindu mythology, and it shows three people kind of in merriment, okay? This card is talking about Aspera, okay? So these are celestial nymphs. This is based on Hindu mythology. This is what happens after you're trapped and then your energy has to go elsewhere. We have celestial nymphs. These are extremely beautiful, skilled beings. They perform dance, they perform music, they have the ability to seduce gods and seduce mortals. Listen, if you are trapped in a disguise similar to donkey skin, the extraordinary energy that you carry is siphoned out, and people that would be average all of a sudden develop some type of people skill where you would almost compare them to divine beings or celestial nymphs. Now, these are people that party. These are people that this is about fornication. This is about pleasure. And so I'm not saying what some of you are probably picking up and I'm saying, but because it wasn't apparent initially the power that your spirit had, you were caged mentally, and then when your energy was harvested, all of a sudden you got some random schmandom Joe Schmo taking a hit of your energy, and all of a sudden they got people skills. All of a sudden they've got flair. They can dance, they can sing, they can perform, they're good at sales, they're a counselor, they're a diplomat, they're a head of a country. And it's only because you were trapped in donkey skin, unwilling to authentically come out as the wondrous child that you really were. But y'all, this says that for a period of time, whoever was able to oppress you, whoever could not educate you and tell you how extraordinary you were, that's because you would have fucked up their hustle. And so all of the power that they could divvy out, for this part, I was like, damn. So this is like saying you're a library. Most libraries are public, right? This is like you being an entire library of extraordinary energy. All of a sudden, they close you down to the public and they start renting you out to private groups. So there are only specific people that could check a book out of you. Like energetically, anybody who walked around with a book from your library, all of a sudden, like their reading skills elevated. Now they could speak. Now, you know what I mean? Something about your books had the ability to advance. But remember, you are this extraordinary seed, and you came here to break a family that had an extraordinary spiritual deficit. But they trapped, harvested, and then and slung your energy around in the spiritual streets. Anybody who picks up a piece of your energy, now they're gifted. Now they got people skills. Like, do you understand what I'm saying? Right? Almost like these nymphs, these celestial nymphs. And so when you, yeah. But anyway, the oppression gave somebody else power. Oppressing you was a power. It gave somebody leverage. And so the tower, here's the tower. Let me tell you why the tower is really here. Yes, you were an investment. You were a part of their big plan. You were a part of their future. They took a lot of risks, calculated risks, because they felt like whatever they had done to you, it was something that they would have been able to fall back on. And for a period of time, it worked. But they didn't nurture who you were, and they thought that because they didn't nurture it, it never would have grown. It never would have blossomed. And no, they didn't educate you or grow you or groom you. But at some point you change. Listen, this wondrous child, this extraordinary child got to grow up. And if you have a spiritual calling, that means that your spirit is always going to it is almost like a timed release pill. And so for a period of time, I feel like people were able to take your energy and to do many, many things. Many things with it and offer it to many people. But they are sitting in a tower because that wondrous child turns into the warrior. Now, the Celtic oracle is describing you as Lu, the shining one. And so you grow up, but then like your spirit, your soul, it's got certain things that are time releasing, right? Like if you're in the Eight of Swords, it's almost like during specific seasons, one of those swords that was surrounding your mind to imprison you, it's like a certain sword would slip away. And so at some point you get closer and closer to recognizing that the donkey skin is not you. Not only is the donkey skin not you, but you no longer have a fear. You only put it on out of a fear of a family member. But when you don't have that fear anymore, you don't need to wear the donkey skin. Well, if you're not wearing the donkey skin, what are you going to wear? And that is when it all begins. When you decide what to wear, when you decide what it is that you're supposed to do and develop, when you decide, the donkey skin is over. Listen, anybody that checked a book out of your library without your permission and was reading your shit, they got to bring that book back. Do you understand what I'm saying? Anybody that had access to your extraordinary energy, your extraordinary gifts. Superficially, maybe they got a level up. Maybe they look like they had some fucking prowess or some skill, but that was all you. That was all you. And so Lu, this warrior, represents the light of God, the sun, a king, a master craftsman. This is a savior, hero, God of justice, the God of law. And so they're in a tower because their investment grew up. Their investment grew up and it bloomed and blossomed into what it was always supposed to be. And so anybody that misused the child of promise is in a tower now. They are now in a tower because when there is no enemy inside, the enemy outside can't hurt you. Inside of you, you no longer had a list of enemies that you needed to hide from. As long as you had a list of enemies to fear, you were going to be wearing all kind of skins that weren't really you. When you get rid of those fears and there's no enemy inside, anybody that could hook and tether to you energetically, they have nothing to hold on to because you're not vibrating at a frequency where this can work anymore. You have elevated above them because you were the answer. You were always the answer. And I feel like the spiritual family that you were put into, like the very thing that they did to you is the reason. It is almost like they had to do it to the one that was supposed to save them, but it wasn't going to take you out. And so now they have to see themselves, which is why this is a tower. This is investment, because you are the shining one. So you represent law, you represent justice, you represent God's light, but you were always going to blossom. You were always going to bloom, even if they never nurtured or touched it. That wasn't the requirement. Obviously, God knew that these people didn't have it in their spirit to develop you in that way. And you didn't need that development from them, which is why you were sent to them, right? They couldn't nurture your spirit. You were there to teach it. But they needed to see the depths of their darkness. They needed to see their own spirit. They need to see what they were willing to do to you. When it didn't work, now they have to sit with their own reflection. And so, y'all, this is a tower, but this is a tower that could have taken place literally from your conception, when you were first unwrapped. And it could have continued in a variety of ways where maybe you had to disguise yourself in many ways out of fear. But whenever that time release from the Most High pill goes off inside your soul and you start waking up, this talks about you being prepared. You already being prompt and ready to, like, you were ready for the oppression at some point. You started to learn things about yourself. Y'all, and this was many hands. And one of the reasons is it talks about you being able to have the intelligence of the heart and live in some type of forgiveness, like being able to forgive self and others. And so sometimes you have to do the spiritual work that these people are not capable of doing. When you're around a group of people who lie, cheat, and steal, to wait on an apology is y'all know them memes where you'll see a skeleton looking out of the window and it'll be like, I don't know, he's waiting on something to come, like that. Like you would have turned into a skeleton waiting on an apology. And so you start to do the spiritual legwork of like 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 people. You just start to do it on your own, repairing and kind of patching yourself up from the things that you've endured. But yeah, y'all, that is this reading. Their investment was the shining one, but that was always going to be a flawed foundation. You were not here to be somebody's extraordinary come up, right? Like your family had a need. They had a need that you were sent to service, and they didn't understand. But y'all, they literally had to get it wrong. They had to. And so if you are one of these people who can identify with this, the strength of you is remarkable. To be able to endure something like this and then to not come out like the people who treat, like, to not behave like them, to not think like them, to not retaliate, to not respond, like, that is incredible. But that's a testament to your spirit. That's why you are the extraordinary child who came to fulfill an extraordinary need. And so, y'all, however old you are, I mean, the tower was always going to come because the foundation was always flawed. It was never going to work forever. But the time release is essentially divine timing. And we never know when we're going to see that first crack in the tower. We never know when the bricks are going to first or finally start to fall. But this reading says there's a tower here, and you initiated the tower because you recognize, I do not need this disguise. I do not need this donkey skin. When you need the disguise and the donkey skin, it is because you are responding to some type of seed that they planted in you. That was the seed that made you feel unsafe. That was the seed that made you feel like you needed to be someone else. It was the mental prison that they needed you trapped in so that you were existing in fear. As long as you are in fear, you are in food. You are food, a source of energetic food for many beings in a variety of ways. And so, y'all, these people were like spiritual dealers or energy dealers. and you were their answer. You were their gift. But when they first opened you, they felt that they did not get something that they could love. And the only way that they could find a way to love you is to come up with the plan that this reading kind of unfolds. All right, y'all. I love you. I'll see you on the next one. Bye.